Hello, this is Geeks Unleashed, episode 32. Hello, welcome to Geeks Unleashed, episode 32. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jasmine.
Each week we cover the news of the week and we pick a couple of things to review that caught our fancy in TV, comics, movies and games. This week's reviews are WandaVision on Disney Plus and a selection of Future State comics that came out this week from DC Comics.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show. So if you have not had a chance to watch WandaVision or read any of the DC Future State books, you might want to pause this and come back later. And then at the very end, we'll give you a couple of recommendations of our own.
Thanks very much. You won't know this, but that took about 5 attempts to record that intro.
We're working on it. We're getting there. We're getting back in the swing of things. It's only our second episode back, so
second proper episode back.
Yeah, we're reverting back to like when we first started, where it's like, oh crap, we got to take a few episodes to get back into the swing of things.
I did think that last week. Actually, I did think, oh crap, I felt like rusty. So
last week I think we were just excited to kind of like get started again. So last week everything was like super long-winded because that one was a like 2-hour 15-minute episode.
Oh yeah.
We promised to be a little more brief this time.
Yeah, we're not going to spend anywhere near. Don't worry, you won't be with us for 2 hours. It was getting on for 2.5 hours. Yeah, it's been a super long week. So there's a lot that happened this week. There's loads of news, to be honest. But as we always start with the news of the week, not all the news of the week.
We just pick a couple of things that jumped out at us.
Yeah.
And one of the first things was one of my favorite franchises ever, Mortal Kombat. They have released the first look images of the new film that's coming out. So we've got images of Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Scorpion, Kung Lao, Kano, Jax, Sonya, and the brand new character played by Louis Tan, Cole Young. So I'm super stoked. I always tell people that Mortal Kombat, the first film, is the most perfect video game adaptation ever. So I am completely biased as far as Mortal Kombat goes. Now, of course, Annihilation was terrible. I don't recommend that movie to anyone. But I have to say, I am definitely looking forward to this Mortal Kombat reboot. These images look pretty cool. Not too many of the characters in their iconic costumes yet. But this is going to be one of those films that WB says that they are releasing to HBO Max first before it hits theaters, or the same time that it hits theaters. So this is going to be something I am super excited about for later this year. So the first look images are pretty cool, I have to say. Jax is not really a character that I was too familiar with because they don't introduce him until the second film. But Mechad Brooks as Jax, he looks super jacked in this role with his metal arms. So take a look at those. I think it was Entertainment Weekly. Those images came out. So, and of course, Scorpion is my favorite villain. So I'm super excited. I'm really excited about Mortal Kombat. So I can't wait.
I don't really feel the excitement because I'm not as into it as you are. I did say to you, I think last week, that I've never seen a single.
I know. I'm trying to get you to watch it.
No, I was thinking like, yeah, I'll watch them if we could do a review on them or maybe an episode on I don't know. But I was thinking about it. How good would it be to follow up our King of Christmas movie with, say, a King of Christmas best adaptions or something like that, gaming adaptions.
That would be awesome.
What was the best video game adaptation? So
I'd be totally down for that, and I'm sure we could find a couple of other people to join us.
Mario Brothers.
I do now. Okay, I do like that movie. It's a terrible movie, but I do like it. I mean, I really do. Bob Hoskins is Mario. Come on, John Leguizamo is Luigi. Oh man, it's great. I love that movie.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head other than that, but they're all fairly terrible game adaptions. But anyway, there's been a load of announcements in regards to new books coming out in April from DC Comics, and the First one is Green Lantern issue 1, which is by Jeffrey Thorne and art by Dexter Soy. It's going to be sort of a newly formed United Planets and Guardians of the Universe. Not going to say too much more of that, but there's a theme running through these new books, as we will start with this first one. Batman the Dark Knight, issue 1 by Tom Taylor, and art is going to be by Andy Kubert. This is actually a mini-series. It's going to be 6 issues, 32 pages, $3.99 by the way. Then moving across to digital first, but sticking with Batman themes, the next Batman Second Son issue 1, which follows our future Tim Fox as Batman in the future state. This is a first issue of 4 issues, I'm assuming just on Comixology and the DC app, and I would assume they're probably going to collect it at some point. Sticking with Batman, the next new book is the Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries issue 1. This is it's an all-new, all-ages series. It's going to have Superboy in it, and it's going to have Robin in it. So again, another Batman. Sorry, that's the next book. Sorry, Batman and Scooby-Doo, but it's going to be the Dark Knight teaming up with Scooby-Doo for the Mysteries Inc. I sort of jumped ahead there. I was reading my next notes. Apologies. The next book that's coming out is Challengers of the Super Sons, which is Robin and that's Damian Robin and Jonathan Kent as a young boy teaming up for a 7-issue miniseries. Again, 32 pages, $3.99. I love the Super Sons, and it's by Peter Tomasi with art by Rax Rayner. And I loved it when they originally sort of brought these characters together. I think they were brilliant. I've been completely disappointed that Bendis actually aged Jonathan upwards. And so all of these books, I guess, are probably set in the past or whatever it is, some other timeline or something or other. The next book is RWBY Justice League issue 1.
Which I'm excited about. I really love that RWBY series. Blake is my favorite. I'm just saying.
This is a 7-issue miniseries. It's written by Margaret Bennett and art is by Anik. So it's 32 pages, $3.99. There's a variant as well. I'm quite looking forward to this. I don't know anything about RWBY, but I really like the art, so I was quite intrigued. That is the announcements of all of the new books that are coming out. One of the things I did notice as we were going, and actually if you look at the solicitations for April as a whole, how many Batman and Batman-related books there are now. And it's feeling very much like DC Comics is really DC Comics, Detective Comics, as we know.
As it were, yeah.
Yeah, so I've sort of said this to you before, Jasmine, how I think that DC is extremely reliant on Batman, and would DC survive without Batman?
No,
I think their April solicitations are proving to me that I think they've sat back and realized actually we've got all these low-selling titles like Supergirl, Aquaman. They're breaking even. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're even costing them money. And they've stepped back and actually said, you know what's making us money? Batman. Yep. So in March, you've got the first issue of Joker and Batman Legends, and I think Batman Legends is an $8 book, which is going to be like £6 something over here. I mean, that's just crazy. Just like, so, if you're a Batman fan and, you want to get all the Batman books, you've got to add all those books that I just mentioned, Joker, Batman Legends.
But those expensive books, they're doing stories on the back end, aren't they? Kind of like what they're doing with Future State. So, I mean, that's part of the reason for the price. But at the same time, it's like you get 2 books in one.
So I think the Batman's Legend one has been described as an anthology book, and it's going to have three titles in there, and the Joker also has a punchline backup. So you are getting double the story, which is something that we'll talk about in Future State when we do Future State later. But you are getting more content for your money. But again, you are having to pay out more money. Yes, you
are having to pay up front for the content.
And so,
right?
Yeah. I mean, there might be, if you didn't have that extra content, would you buy an $8 32-page book? No, you wouldn't. So they put more content in there, but they know. I don't know how it's going to work on the back end, like in terms of paying writers and illustrators, but they're clearly not getting paid as much because they're not doing a full issue. So, and they know that selling $8 is an $8 book is the equivalent of 2 books. And I don't always necessarily feel that there's actually 2 comic books worth of material in there. So, just my thoughts.
It's a toss-up.
Yeah. I'm excited for some of those books anyway, but whether or not I buy them, I don't know yet.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited to see this Justice League and RWBY mashup, like mixing quote unquote traditional comics with manga style stuff. Like, I'm super excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along, our last piece of news is Disney Plus is reimagining Doogie Howser M.D. And they have found their lead. They're retooling the series. It is going to be starring Peyton Elizabeth Lee, and she will be playing Lahala Doogie Kamialoha. And that series is going to be a half-hour series. Lahala is the daughter of an Irish mother and a Hawaiian father. I'm guessing the series takes place in Hawaii. It is going to be executive produced by Courtney Kang, who also produces and writes for Fresh Off the Boat and How I Met Your Mother. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting to retool that series, and we'll get to see the reinvention of the medical teenage genius that was Doogie Howser. So I mean, what's not to love about Neil Patrick Harris? It was everybody's kind of introduction to Neil Patrick Harris way back in the day before How I Met Your Mother made him super famous. So I'm excited, and like, total side story, but when one of my cousins, like, he moved to LA long before I did, and he said he ran into Doogie Howser, and this is what he called him. He didn't call him Neil Patrick Harris. He's like, we ran into Doogie Howser at a bar. We heckled him all the way across the bar. We called him Doogie all night, and I was like, "You are such a jerk. Why would you do that?" Anyway, so I'd be excited to see a Doogie Howser remake, because I do.
Did he respond?
No, absolutely not. He was so mad at them for calling him Doogie all night.
He must get that though. Like,
I'm sure he does.
Like, well, I've heard about celebrities like tell stories about how most of the time, you know, they're all right. And I can't remember what celebrity it was I was watching an interview on, but they were chasing their kid down the street who was being naughty or whatever it was, and running onto the beach. And then some fans were like, "Oh, do the line, whatever, or take a picture." And he's like, "Look, man, I'm with
chasing my kid, okay?
Like, just go away." Like,
yeah.
And I was sitting once in a cafe, and you won't know him. It's an English actor, but in crime thing we have over here, David Tennant, but it's finished now. But I was literally sitting in there with my kids, sitting in this gym, this cafe in this gym, and this actor walks in, and he's with his kids, and straight away I was like, oh God. It's like, and at the time he was on TV as well, like he was in this mystery show, which I've bloody forgot the name of. But anyway, and I thought to myself, like, about saying, hey, like, just because, you know, I recognized him and he was with his kids and I was with my kids, and he's literally standing about a meter away. And I was like, nah, man. He's like, it's his day off. You know, he's with his kids. So I didn't say anything. Like, I didn't even say hey. Maybe I could have said hey, like, but I didn't. And because I just thought, you know, he clearly knows he's recognizable. So yeah, I think sometimes you've got to think, actually, you know, when I saw him with his kids as well, I just thought he just wants to be left alone. So but the Doogie Howser thing, I'm well excited for that. Like, I would love to get my kids into this, and I loved Doogie Howser as a kid.
Yeah.
I can't really remember it that well, but like, I just remember him. I think it was the end of every episode, didn't he? Like, write like a diary, or like on the computer or something. Or
oh man, I don't remember. But I remember Doogie Howser was the reason I started to like things like ER. So like, it was my segue into all of these hospital shows that eventually like took over primetime.
I never watched ER.
Oh my god. ER was the best of all of the hospital shows. You know, everybody talks about Grey's Anatomy. ER was miles and miles better than Grey's Anatomy.
It's a show that I always say, like, I may go back and watch, but then I think the further as time goes on, like, I know how. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to watch old stuff, but like, is it going to be that dated to go back and watch it? So,
it's dated because you know those people now. So they don't, they don't look like George Clooney was on ER, but like George Clooney then does not look like the George Clooney that everybody is familiar with now.
Oh, yeah, well.
So like going back and looking at them when they were much younger is sort of dated, but like, I mean, other than like vehicles and things like that, I don't think a show like ER would feel too outdated.
I think also the other thing is like there's just so much new stuff to watch.
Yeah. Who has time to go back anyway? Yeah.
There's our news of the week.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Only your lovely rose bushes.
That's all? Are you using your night vision?
I assure you, my love, I see nothing amiss. You have absolutely no reason to be... No!
You were saying?
So our first review, we are finally back with some brand new Disney Plus content. Well, I should say Marvel content on Disney Plus. It is 2021 and this is the first piece of new Marvel we have gotten since 2019.
Yeah.
So WandaVision premiered on Disney Plus. The first 2 episodes are available now for streaming. The series was created by Jack Schaefer. It's directed by Matt Shankman. It stars Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, Deborah Jo Rupp, Fred Melamed, Catherine Hahn, Teyonah Parris, Kat Dennings, and Randall Park. Those last 2 names, I did not realize they were in this series. I will spoil it right now and tell you they are not in the first 2 episodes. So I guess we got to wait a little bit before we see Kat Dennings and Randall Park. But I'm guessing those 2 characters are going to be what ties this to the Doctor Strange sequel that Wanda is supposed to be a pretty big part of. So series starts off. It is very, very heavily influenced by a lot of the 50s and 60s sitcoms that we used to get here on American TV, stuff like Bewitched, I Love Lucy. It's very reminiscent of that era and that kind of television. It starts out in black and white. And it basically, it's the trope of the out of place people trying to fit into a society that is clearly not meant for them. So you've got Wanda and Vision. Wanda is one of the most powerful powerful people in the entire Marvel universe. And then, of course, Vision was Jarvis, that was actually incarnated. But they're trying to fit into this cookie cutter world, and they're trying to assimilate into this just everyday Joe Blow, keeping up with the Joneses kind of life. It's a 30-minute format, which I was not expecting. I guess when I logged in,
I wasn't expecting that either. No,
yeah,
I turned it on.
When I logged in this morning, and I was like, 27 minutes. That's it? What?
Well, the first episode wasn't even 27 minutes. It was about 22 minutes.
Yeah, because it has like 7.5 minutes worth of credits. I was like, this is ridiculous for credits. Come on.
I think they stretch those credits out. Like,
yeah, like they've got the really cool Marvel typical end credits sequence, and then after the Marvel sequence, there's the entire, I like to call it the Netflix sequence, because then they tell you about, this is the German cast and this is the Indonesian cast, like all the voice people that dub everything over. Anyway, so there's it's 27 minutes, but like Mark said, it's 5 minutes and some change of credits in the first episode. What struck me right away was how familiar it felt. Like when it first started, I was like, oh my gosh, there's the laugh track, there's just black and white, it's shenanigans, it's very kind of simplistic, follows a very simplistic standard sitcom formula. But as the episode goes further and further along, you do realize that something is definitely off. I assume it's sinister. I mean, it has to be, right? This can't be something that came from a good place. But you don't get like a sinister vibe, at least not at the very beginning. It's just kind of like something's not right, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. But toward the end of the episode, Wanda seems to be the only one that starts to realize that things are not quite what they seem, or things are not moving in the way that they should be moving, or she can tell that something is wrong. So it's what I found funniest about the episodes, both episodes, was that Vision is so aloof. He's always been kind of unaware, just by nature, because he is not human. But he feels even more aloof and just kind of it's like a big doofus throughout both of these first two episodes. Um, so, but his, I guess, being unaware is kind of what lends itself to the theory, my theory at least, that Wanda knows that something is wrong, but Wanda is the only one that knows that something is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of the vibe that I get. It's only the first two episodes. They haven't really explained much. By the time they get to the second episode, they start to reveal a little bit more. There's a couple of sequences with a radio where through the static you can hear someone calling out to Wanda. Now, in my head, it sounded like Clint Barton. That could be completely wrong. It could be Doctor Strange.
I thought it sounded like Steve Rogers. Now I know it can't be Steve Rogers because he's no. It could be. It could be Steve Rogers because he's not dead, but it's unlikely to be Steve Rogers. But I literally, like, me and my wife watching it, even she said that sounds like Steve Rogers. I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. Like, but it can't be Steve because, like,
I picked Clint because I know that Hawkeye has a series on Disney Plus. So, like, if they're trying to connect the different TV series together, then this could be a way. But it could very well be Doctor Strange because, again, Wanda is a big part of the Doctor Strange sequel. So, anyway, there is a voice on the radio that comes through the static, and you can tell that this voice is calling out to Wanda in a way that it's trying to ask her, like, if she needs help, if she's okay. So that when those kinds of things start happening, that's when it gets really interesting. And then we get further into the episode, and pretty much the last couple of minutes of the episode, there's at night, right when they're like getting ready for bed, there's always this random like banging noise that they can hear outside. And in the first episode, they kind of explain it away like, oh, it's just a tree hitting the window. But this time they actually run out of the house to try to see what the sound is. And there is a beekeeper. I mean, it
comes out of the ground.
Yeah, he comes out of the sewer. But when he turns around to look at them, you can't see his face. It's covered with the beekeeping net, but it's also completely like blacked out. You can't see who it is, what the face is at all. But right when that happens, Wanda is just kind of like, no. And then she starts to reverse time and go back to, a couple of minutes before all of this happened. And then they just kind of reenact the scene all over again without the guy coming out of the sewer. So by the end of the second episode, you're pretty sure like something is amiss, and I don't quite know what it is. There's also some, I call it Pleasantville elements at play because
that was it. I looked that up. It's definitely. I loved Pleasantville.
Oh my god, Pleasantville is a fantastic film. I love that movie so much.
Was it 1998? It came out in.
Yeah. So Pleasantville is a movie where 90% of the movie is in black and white, and then as people start to, as their minds start to expand, or as they're exposed to more things, and they accept those things within themselves to be true, they start to see things in color, which kind of also happens in a book that we all read in American schools called The Giver, where kids eventually start to see color after they hit puberty. Anyway, so the Pleasantville aspect, like the first couple of episodes are in black and white, but there's a scene where Wanda finds a toy helicopter in her rose bushes, and the toy helicopter is, to me, it looks like the same colors as Tony Stark's armor. It's red and gold. It looks way too modern to be from the 50s. It looks like a very modern, like military kind of style helicopter. So that's the only piece of color that we see at the very beginning. And then at the end of the episode, after she realizes that she's pregnant, then both her and Vision and their house become colorized as well. Also, completely random, the house in the second episode is completely different from their house in the first episode.
Yeah, we noticed that.
And I don't know if that was on purpose, or like, are they going to be in a different house every episode? Like, I thought that was really weird. So yeah, like it's got this saccharine sweet sitcom overlay, but you know that something awful or something terrible is going on that has created this alternate reality. My theory is that somehow, some kind of way, after the events of Infinity War or Endgame, maybe Wanda was captured, and if she was captured, she has retreated into her own mind, and she has created this illusion of her and Vision together. That's as far as I've gotten so far with just the first 2 episodes. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, I want to know what's going on, but this didn't grab me enough to make me want to sit down and watch this next Friday.
So a couple of things like I want to go through, like so the pregnancy thing and the thing where she said no and then she rewound time. So if you know anything about Wanda in the comics, Wanda is extremely powerful. She decimated the mutant population by saying 3 words, no more mutants. God, that's got to be like 10 years ago now. There's a massive Marvel crossover called House of M, where reality got changed and Magneto became like the king of the world, and then all the mutants ended up having to team up and etc. And I think it was actually Wolverine who saved the day, and then Wanda, in a fit of rage, said no more mutants, and I think she reduced the mutant population from millions and millions of mutants down to, I think it was like 198 from memory. I think they still kind of suffer from that storyline now, but that's the power that she has in the comics. And when she said no in that moment, it actually reminded me of that moment in the comics where she went no and rewound time in that show, or in this show. Well, she's kind of obviously in the sitcom universe that she's in, which it wasn't really up until that point that I didn't think that Wanda knew. But the moment she said no and rewound time, I was like, okay. So my thoughts on this now are that someone's put her there, but now she knows she's been put there.
Yeah.
And she likes that she's there.
Well, she likes that Vision is there with her.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so the pregnancy thing, now I didn't read this story, but I know in the story, I know in the comics that Wanda as well used magic to create twin sons, Tommy and Billy, who eventually join the Young Avengers. Now, is this where this is headed? Like, you know, is it, when they get out of this sitcom universe, is it going to lead to us gaining 2 Young Avengers characters, which we're also getting in the Hawkeye series? We're getting Miss Marvel, who is not a Young Avenger, but, you know, we're getting a lot of young superheroes. Are we potentially seeing the next Avengers film being the Young Avengers rather than Avengers, which I would be really on board with? But you know, I could just be massively jumping to conclusions, but why would they add the pregnancy in? My thoughts on, like you say, her knowing that she's there is because somehow Vision is there, which leads me to questions, because at the end of the first episode, the sitcom pans out to somebody watching it on a TV, like in some sort of, I don't know, laboratory or...
Yeah, it reminded me of the facility that Hydra used in Captain America Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it was something like that. So I think you said before we recorded, is it Hydra? Is it the Skrulls?
Well, the watch, there was that watch commercial in the second episode, and when they zoomed in on the close-up of the watch, it had a Hydra logo in it. So they have introduced Hydra, but... I just like it's
Hydra
not enough information yet to put the pieces together.
I was going to say Hydra make more sense because that would tie into Wanda's background, like where her and her brother were originally used by Hydra. So that would be interesting. I think it would be pretty cool to be the Hydra twist, but then it started making me question as well, like, why would they do this? So are they trying to bring back the Infinity Stones? You know, is that because obviously if someone's watching it on the sitcom on this TV, you know, I don't know, sort of a lot of questions. But so going back to the actual little sitcom episodes on their own, to take them as they are, like, I agree with you about this is very much like watching like a homage to 50s and 60s television, and we've seen it done before, like we talked about Pleasantville, and I'm sure there are other people that have done it, but it was very 50s and 60s. And the second episode's titles, I was like, this is Bewitched.
Yes.
Like,
the opening credits. Oh man, I used to love Bewitched.
I used to love Bewitched as well, like as a kid. Like, and I know it came out probably before I was born. It was probably just repeated on TV, but I used to love watching it. And I think originally it was black and white, and then it eventually did move to color as well, that show. So that was probably what was a cool thing that they did deliberately with episode 2, because that show started in black and white, moved to color. And what's cool is when we were watching it, both my daughters walked into the room and went, "Why are you watching something that's grey?" like, and I was like, "It's not grey, it's black and white." And they were like,
No,
like,
it's great.
no,
It's great. It's
and they
grayscale.
were-
You're watching grayscale TV.
They were like, they were really weirded out by the fact that it wasn't color, and I thought this is quite strange to them because even as a child I grew up with black and white stuff and color, but black and white as well, and obviously smaller screens, which they've done with the black borders on the TV. I was like, oh, black borders. It's like, even, that's one of the things I always hate about watching old stuff is you've got the black borders. But I was like, they have really done well in terms of trying to make it as 50s and 60s as they could. So there's two moments in both the episodes that like we were just laughing our heads off. The dinner scene in the first episode,
Yeah,
and where it's just hilarious. Her cooking with all things floating around the kitchen, and he's playing on his little ukulele,
yeah,
and just all that, and telling them about the weird traditions that they have of hide and seek.
yeah. In Sokovia, yeah.
So yeah, it's Sokovia, not hide and seek, where they go guess who. Sorry, but then the second episode, and like you just said about sort of Vision being funny, and the magic show was just brilliant. It was funny.
That was really well done.
That whole magic show was so good, and I was really like concerned about Marvel entering into comedy world, because I remember I don't know if you ever saw, but a few years ago DC had a half an hour comedy show or something called Powerless, and I only ever watched the first episode. And
that was the one that was exclusive to the PlayStation Network, right?
Was it? No. That's Powers you're thinking of. No, Powerless was it was a DC comedy sitcom thingy. I think they were set in an office or something like that, and I don't know. I got a feeling I can't remember what it was. Their job was involved in sort of clearing up superhero stuff or doing something behind the scenes. And sometimes you'd see superheroes flying in the background or whatever it was. But it was comedy. And so I was like, this is basically like a sitcom comedy. And I've been hearing that She-Hulk's going to be similar. So I was a bit worried about that. But actually, these two things were fairly well done. And
Paul Bettany has always been funny. And to be able to see him actually do comedy, I really enjoy Vision in the series.
Yeah, no, he was just so good, and I thought also Elizabeth Olsen was actually handled comedy really well.
Yeah,
I don't know, she comes across as a really good actress, and I don't think I've ever seen her in anything other than playing Wanda.
Man, if you ever want to be depressed, go watch Wind River. It's her and Jeremy Renner. Oh, it is so good. That's a really, really good film, and she's great.
That is a film I do want to watch. I do know about that film. I'd heard some good things about it, but the comedy aspect of it, and it had me reflecting a little bit on TV and content. Although I didn't overly love these episodes, I did like them and they were kind of enjoyable. But I don't want them to. I think it's only 8 episodes. I don't want them to spend loads of time in this sitcom world, which is what I think is going to happen.
But I feel like that's moving faster because there was more of the real world peeking through by the second episode.
Yeah.
So I think by the time we get to like episodes 3, 4, 5, we're gonna really hit the like dilemma phase where it's like, well, oh man, it's really starting to unfold at this point.
The other thing it reminded me of, the radio and someone's voice coming through. I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Life on Mars.
No.
So it was a UK show over here, and I think it went on for 2 seasons here. Then it had a spin-off, Ashes to Ashes. You guys did a remake, Life on Mars, but it got cancelled. And Life on Mars basically is a policeman who ends up in an alternate 70s. And again, they play homage to the 70s cop stuff. And every now and again, you'll hear the radio or the TV go, and voices he knows from the present will be creeping through the radio,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know why. So you sort of question: has he gone back in time, or is he somewhere else?
Yeah.
And well, we find out that he hasn't gone back in time. Well, that's really how I never watched the spin-off Ashes to Ashes, but that's pretty much what it alludes to, is that he never actually went back in time. That actually, I won't ruin it if someone hasn't watched Life on Mars. Go and watch it; it's really cool. But anyway, so like I say, I enjoyed this. I will carry on watching this because, yeah, like I say, it's had me reflecting on content at the moment, and I want to kind of get away from. What I've realised is a lot of the stuff that I watch, I watch a lot of stuff, but I want to get away from the stuff that's got real world in it, like all the Chicagos that I watch and the FBI's and the whatever else I watch that is bringing COVID into it. Like it's fucking been going on for a year now. I'm done.
Yeah.
I want this done. Like the last thing, I get a few hours a day to enjoy entertainment. The last thing I'll do is sit down and watch actual entertainment that's brought COVID in. So actually, it was nice to have something that's lighthearted and sinister at the same time. So yeah, I did enjoy this, and I don't know if I want to watch it weekly, but I probably will, if I'm honest, because it was family entertainment as well.
Yeah.
So you could watch this with children. Even that sinister moment wasn't that sinister. So
Nothing major or scary or anything like that has happened yet. I think I would probably wait until it's done. If they're only half-hour episodes, I mean, I could clear this out in another 3 hours and be done with it.
You could do it at night, yeah.
So I'd probably pick it up once everything is said and done, but it's not enough to keep me coming back week to week.
So we rated this 3.5 out of 5, but yeah, we would watch it again or carry on watching it. So we'll move on to our comic book section of the episode, which is Future State
Part 2.
DC Comics. Yeah, Future State Part 2.
Yeah.
You may think there's a theme, but there is not. We are not going to do more Future State books for the next 6 weeks. So although they are coming out every week until the end of February.
Who knows? If they're good enough, they might wind up in our recommendations. But we're not going to be covering them.
Well, yeah, we're not going to be reviewing them in detail. But like you say, we're going to carry on reading the few that we've liked, but we've grabbed enough between us that we have picked a few that we probably will stick with for the next couple of weeks. So well 6 weeks left now, so it's halfway through January, so we've got 6 weeks left of this alternate possible future, or one of many potential futures. So the first one that we looked at actually was The Dark Detective by Mariko Tamaki. Tamaki, yeah. I should probably think about that. Anyway, art and cover are by Dan Mora, and colors are by Jordi Belair. Belair. There we go. I should do lessons on how to say people's names. So I've got my Dark Detective issue with me, actually. Do you know what? Even if you don't read this book, the front cover needs a poster. This is so good. This
book was a neon dream. I loved all of the coloring in this book. I mean, it was fantastic. And we talked about the coloring last week in the next Batman, issue 1, right? But the coloring this week, it's like they're. I don't know. I mean, of course, they're not competing with each other, but I didn't think I would enjoy the coloring even more. And then it turns out that I did. The colors in here are so fantastic.
Do you know, you always hear this. I've heard this argument before, actually. You hear about the writer, you hear about the illustrator, but you rarely ever hear about the colorist. I'll tell you what, colorists do not get enough props. I hate picking up black and white comics. I really do. I mean, I wouldn't say I hate them. I've read them, but I enjoy comics for the beauty of the medium. A comic book is about artwork, right? If you want to read just writing, I'll read a novel, or I'll read a book of some kind. But I enjoy comics because of the medium of the artwork, and I don't really enjoy reading comics where it's just black and white. I've read, like I said to you I said to you actually during the first lockdown, I read the first couple of Walking Dead graphic novels, which are all in black and white. which I actually didn't feel were that well written either, to be honest.
That's a whole other story, though.
But I didn't get into it, and then I did pick up the first issue of the coloured Walking Dead, and it was like
night and day.
I could probably get on board with this, and because I just prefer it being coloured. But yeah, like you say about the colorist, it's just so good. Like you say, the neon Tokyo design, and just how he brings
this is
to
a
life.
Gotham City unlike any version of Gotham City that I've ever seen before. Because normally when I think about Gotham City, I think like, oh, it's dark colors, everything is muted, we got lots of blacks and browns. But this really did take me to a totally different place. Like when I first opened this book, I was like, I feel like I stepped right into like Altered Carbon or Blade Runner.
Oh yeah, no, there's touches of like I think you've got it written down on your notes there, like Akira, Blade Runner, Altered Carbon. You kind of feel like from things that are going on that it's potentially 5 years in the future. But I mean, I guess it's 5 years in a comic book future. So 5 years in a comic book future is probably maybe realistic. The technologies that they have even in the current present time, you probably could get to this level. But I mean, like you said, every page you turn and the colors, like there's a scene which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's a scene where Batman is in a sort of hospital chair, and the pinks that are across the two double pages are just amazing. And actually, there's a sign outside the building that he goes into that says neon outside. Like, honestly, the colorist needs to get some real props. And the following page, it's in a sort of a Times Square looking place. And again, I mean, there's so many fantastic colors. You could just talk about the colors. I mean, we've probably talked about the colors now for about 4 minutes, but
I will say, like, normally it's hard for me to pick like a favorite page, but reading this book, page 14, for anybody who has the hard copy, it's a scene where Bruce Wayne is running across a crosswalk, like trying to get away from everything just to find a quiet place to like the quiet street to quiet his mind. And it's like all of this neon signage and stuff in the background. It's just, that is a phenomenal layout. Everything about that page is perfect.
The eyeball above the head is really good. Almost like watching. But yeah, so the story itself, it is set in the future state, future, which not every book is set around the same time. So I don't know if this is necessarily set at the same time as reading the next Batman.
That was my question reading it, because it's all the same people. Like, they're still talking about the magistrate, they still have the peacemakers. Like, are we in the same time frame?
No, I think it's around the same time ish, but I'm not saying that like last week's episode. That happened. Like, I'm not saying that last week's episode was like literally last week. Like, it could be that last week's episode was sort of 2 or 3 months ago, or especially when we talk about the backup story in this as well. So in last week's next Batman and Bruce Wayne are gone, and even in the last backup story of the next Batman, those magistrate people, the Arkham Knights, that's it, they're all living in Bruce Wayne's in Wayne Manor. Wayne Manor, and obviously Batman's been completely replaced, and you don't see any sign of Bruce Wayne or anything like that, and so there's a big mystery of where the hell is Bruce Wayne. That mystery is solved like straight away, really. So it starts off at a cemetery, Bruce Wayne, and then it does a bit of flashing back, and which I think is cool. So it's sort of he's running, and you're seeing the past of him running, holding a wound, whilst now in the present he's sort of at this funeral at this graveyard, cemetery is probably the best word. And then, can't have to mention the colors again. And then you see him in sort of current time in this really neon blazing cafe with this woman with cool blonde tips. But
he doesn't even have money. He doesn't call it money. He calls it credits.
Yeah.
So we're so far into Gotham's future that money is not a thing anymore, that everything is it's based on either like a click system or a pay through your phone kind of system where it's all credits. It's not actual cash exchange.
I want to talk about money as well, because when it flashes back to after he got shot, he goes to somewhere where he knows like an underground doctor.
Yes.
And the guy says, I won't open the door unless you've got money. And
Right.
he's like, I've got money. And then he mentions that's the last of the Wayne Enterprise fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And now in the current Batman titles, he lost a lot of his money because of the Joker War. Although allies of his have his money, he's decided to, they've made an agreement that he won't take all his billions back, that he's now a millionaire. So over the last 5 years, a lot must have happened that he has
for Bruce Wayne to be poor.
Yeah. So like he literally hands over his last penny to save his life.
Yeah.
And
when
now
he goes and sits down in that coffee shop in the present day or whatever, he says he only has enough credits for coffee. Can you imagine? Bruce Wayne only has enough money to pay for a cup of coffee.
It's been, I think, reading the current Batman titles where he's not poor anymore, but he's not a billionaire. And then for us to take this break and then get introduced to Bruce Wayne of the future that has no money, it is an interesting development to see that he has nothing, like other than being Batman, which I guess got taken away from him by Tim Fox. However, he does get back into costume, which is pretty cool. Like just
that scene where he just like rips off his clothing and he's wearing a totally redesigned bat suit underneath with no cape.
Getting chased by the magistrates.
That was badass. That was a really badass sequence.
By order of the magistrates, like do you know what? The magistrates are pretty cool. Like I almost hope that they bring this into current time, getting rid of the PD, Gotham PD, and bringing in the magistrate. I actually think that would be a really cool development
because it's an overbearing force, right? It's not. It doesn't feel like it's anything that can be surmounted by like, oh, it's one or two bad cops that are kind of doing their own thing. No, this is like a whole entire organization that is bad from like tip to top, tip to bottom. So
it makes you wonder a little bit because I know you don't read Batman and Detective Comics, but I read them, and so in Batman, like I just said, Batman, he's lost a good chunk of his fortune. But in Detective Comics, they actually have a storyline running at the moment where there's a guy who's trying to become mayor of Gotham City, and his whole policy is that he's anti-vigilantes. He doesn't want to take money from anyone. He wants to be uncorruptible. And there's a scene where he's having an operation on his eye, and he's going to have like a robotic eye thing put in. And then as he's about to have it put in, or he just has it put in the latest Detective Comics, somebody mentions, the doctor mentions to him that Bruce Wayne paid for an upgrade, and he rips the eyeball out and says, no, I'm not going to have Bruce Wayne pay for me. I'm not going to be influenced by anybody. And this mayor who's very anti-vigilantes, like, I don't know where the current titles are going, but is this just a sign of what's to come? So this kind of makes me think, like, is this just DC saying this is like our roadmap, like, for what's coming? Yeah. They're never going to go full, literally, like you say, Neon Tokyo in Gotham and apocalyptic in current books. I don't see them doing that, because I think a lot of the books are they kind of, all Marvel and DC books are always set kind of in a possible now. Right.
But I think you lose too much of your natural audience if you take it to that extreme, because not everybody is into the cyberpunk kind of scene.
Right. I think people like it as an event, which it is. They might potentially buy one or two future state ongoings following this, but I don't think they'd like to see all their books suddenly shifted. I might be wrong, but I can't see you wanting to pick up a DC universe where everything's set 5 to 10 years in our, these kind of technologies would be set probably 30, 40 years in our future. But, would we want to read these books? I don't know. I think one of the things you like about reading Batman and Superman is that, I guess, they're not relatable, but they live in a possible relatable world. I think probably the DC books are less relatable than the Marvel ones. The Marvel ones, I guess, because they're set more in real world places, where Batman is set in Gotham and Superman and all the characters are set in made up cities. Yeah. So it always makes me think with Marvel books that you'd hate to live in New York, New York City. So
I think one of my favorite things about this book, though, was, despite the fact that he had lost everything, he did not lose his will to fight for the voiceless.
Yeah.
So like as he's trying to run away and wrap his head around the state of Gotham as it is now, he comes across this alley and this old man is getting bullied by three street thugs, and he just like runs up to him. Well, not run, but he just kind of inserts himself into the situation and like helps the guy out. And it's like, no matter how far you've fallen, you still have that sort of do-gooder mentality. No, I mean, like you at this point you literally have nothing to lose because you don't have any money anymore. You don't have your giant fortune. You don't have your name. You don't even have your mask to hide behind, or so we think. So I kind of love that part of him is still there.
I love the last page. It's like Bruce Wayne is dead.
Yeah, and the funeral's over. That was one of my favorite lines in the book.
Yeah, literally, I was about to say that the last line of this story, the funeral's over, or actually, it says funeral's over.
Yeah, like get off your pity party and get to work. Like, I love it.
And actually, just before that, he says, "Whatever I am now, I've got nothing left but time to fix this mess." Mm-hmm. So literally, he is Batman. That is it.
Right. And he knows that whatever, and I think that was kind of the moment that it drew me in. And at this point, I think I'm all in for the 2 Batman series that are part of Future State, because he said that the Magistrate's technology is built from Wayne technology stuff. And he's like, and because it's built off of Wayne technologies, I am the only person that can bring it down. And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be so great. Like it's gonna be like him destroying it from the inside. So I thought that part of it was really cool when he basically kind of realizes like, I am uniquely qualified to bring down this horrible organization. So I'm all for it.
So we should probably move on to the second part of our book. We'll just sort of go through this one a bit more briefly, but it's one not that you didn't know this character that well. So
no, I never heard of him.
So the second story, which I actually say I prefer of this book, actually, that is 2 stronger stories rather than last week's Next Batman was 3 stories, which actually all 3 of them felt short. These 2 actually felt like decent sized stories, and I actually was surprised how long Grifter was.
Yeah, me too.
I actually. Now
this actually felt like a double issue.
Yeah, this to me, I preferred this style of book. I think putting 3 stories in last week was a mistake by DC. And obviously it's one they're going to repeat throughout the next 3 issues. So there's no getting away from it. But this Grifter book, if you don't know who Grifter is, so Grifter was a Wildstorm comic, which Wildstorm were part of Image Comics originally 20-ish years ago. And then Wildstorm bought them. I don't know, maybe Image is more than 30 years or 30 years old or something. And then I'm sure DC bought them Wildstorm about 20 years ago, and they brought them over to DC, but they remained a separate imprint for a long time. And then when New 52 happened, they merged Wildstorm characters into the 52 universe, and they were quite predominant in the 52 universe originally. And then Rebirth happened, and they kind of all just disappeared. I know Warren Ellis has done his own thing with Wildstorm, which I've not read, but anyway, they've been recently reintroduced to the sort of the Marvel, to the DC universe. And actually, I read Grifter showed up in Batman issue 101, which came out a couple of months ago, and this book actually I felt tied back to that, and I think the Batman Legends book that's due to come out in March. Actually, one of those it's an anthology book. One of those is going to have a Grifter story in. So they're clearly trying to make Grifter part of Gotham and the Batman universe. And I think Grifter actually is a comic book character that probably would fit well in Gotham. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the book starts with him at a casino, just having a fight. Magistrates show up, who just seemed to be everywhere.
Well, it was Gotham PD showed up, and then he ran from the Gotham PD, and then he ran into the magistrates.
Well, yeah. I mean, that did confuse me, because I thought the PD were meant to be gone, unless it's just an element of them left. I think
there's a very small contingent, but like they don't expect the PD to actually do anything. They still leave the heavy lifting to the magistrate. That was the impression that I got from I think it was the Arkham Knights one.
So he ends up in the back of this magistrate's van, and none other than Luke Fox is tied up in the back. So this is where I felt like they don't really link up as well, because obviously Luke Fox is a main part of the next Batman, the next Batman, which I think as well is, you know, if you're reading next Batman, they haven't said who the Batman is.
Right.
So then he's locked up here and he doesn't know how to get out and needs Grifter's help to get out. And I'm like, well, if you were Batman, you'd know how to get out. So, and they're saying about how the magistrates are really locking down hard. They're going after anyone that even was a vigilante now. They've gone after the vigilantes. Now they're going after anybody that was a vigilante. And they know that Luke Fox used to be Batwing a long time ago. And then
but they're using them. He says that they're taking the old vigilantes and they're using them to catch all of these new criminals.
Oh yeah, like as bait or get information from them or whatever it is. And then they sort of team up, both of them, and then they end up at Grifter's apartment. And I do love it. Luke Fox goes, "Oh, how many hideaway locations have you got?" And he's like, "This isn't one of them. This is my apartment." He's like, "Oh,
it's nice,
lovely, it's lovely." And but then the bit I love, the bottom half of the page where you just see Grifter stick on his mask. I've always loved Grifter's mask. It's a great mask. I've always loved Grifter's look. It's not really like a superhero look because it's just.
It looks very ragtag.
Yeah, it's very military, but then he has the superhero mask to it. And of all the masks that you see in comics, I've always loved Grifter's mask.
Yeah.
I
wonder, like, does he have his powers here? Because I looked him up, and it says he's got like telekinesis and that kind of stuff. But like, they make no mention of that in this little side story.
Yeah, no, I noticed that they didn't bring up his powers. I know that he does have powers. Like, I knew that he had mind powers, but they don't make any mention of it. And so Luke and Grifter is now going to try and get out of Gotham. And that kind of leads them on a story trying to escape and some fights. And then they eventually end up with the Huntress. I don't really want to say too much more about this, but I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought overall I enjoyed both stories. I felt like they were good, strong stories.
Yeah, I would not pick up this story by itself, but if it's in the next issue of the Dark Detective, then I'll definitely keep reading it.
I think it.
It says it's part 1 in this book, but it doesn't say when part 2 is happening.
So if it's like the next it just says to be continued. It just says to be continued, and I'm not sure. So if it's like the next Batman, then it may not be in the next one. It may be in the following one.
Oh, right.
The next Batman will alternate in their backups. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the next 2 books, Jasmine and myself alternated them. So, well, we're not going to go in them in massive detail. There was a lot of, to be honest, there was a load of Future State books that came out this week. There was Robin and just loads. Jasmine grabbed Green Lantern and I grabbed Justice League. At this time of recording, I've only actually read the first half of Justice League, which has a backup story. So I haven't actually read the backup yet, which is Dark Justice League. So the Justice League of Future State is written by Joshua Williamson and art by Robson Rocha and colors by Daniel Henriquez. I believe that's how it's said. Anyway, this follows the Future State Justice League, which is Jonathan Kent, new Wonder Woman, obviously new Superman, new Flash. I don't know anything about who this new Flash is, to be honest. Aquawoman, who goes by Andy Curry, and it's got our Far Sector Green Lantern in it. Sojourner, who they call Joe, and it's got our new Batman in it as well, Tim Fox. So what I like about this is they flash back as well during this book to something that happened with the Justice League. And I'm wondering, again, if this is something that's going to happen in the sort of the books when we come back to them. Like, is this sort of a forewarning to readers that something's going to happen? So they say that somebody joined the Justice League. So the Justice League's always had kind of a revolving membership, and sometimes the Justice League can just be ridiculously large and, even have multiple Justice Leagues. And so they said that somebody joined them and betrayed them, like found out all their secrets and betrayed them. So then the Justice League made a new charter. So the part of the new charter was that they would keep their membership small. And so this current Justice League, which obviously covers all these modern interpretations of our current heroes, they still lead by the same charter, and the rules of the charter are that their membership stays tight. They're not allowed to hang out with each other outside of the Justice League. They're not allowed. They're not allowed a base. They're not, all these kind of things, and they live by this really, really strict rule set, so that nobody can take them down. But that's clearly what ends up happening by the end of this story. It's, to be honest, I really enjoyed it. So they show up and somebody has killed somebody. I won't say it. Someone's killed some villain quite early on, and they all show up together. So they only meet up if it's like a big emergency. So it's quite a big villain that was taken down, and they're all there discussing it. And then they leave our Far Sector Green Lantern to investigate the crime scene, because she is the best detective they have, which I think is quite cool, because it used to be Bruce Wayne as Batman in the previous Justice League. So,
but he's dead, apparently.
Oh, yeah. And the other members kind of go off and into their pairs. Flash and Aquawoman go off, and Wonder Woman and Superman go off and share a hot dog on a rooftop, and the Flash and Aquawoman you see back at Aquawoman's lighthouse. And I don't really want to say too much more here, but I really enjoyed the story. I probably should obviously address the artwork. I mean, if I'm comparing it to Batman Dark Detective, it's not as good, but I really enjoyed it. Actually, it actually just felt like artwork that made a really strong Justice League story, colorful. Mm-hmm. I think it was well illustrated. And I enjoyed it. And I think the cover was amazing. I didn't read Dark Justice League. I don't really know much about the characters. The Dark Justice League. I've never read Dark Justice League. I know that there's got Constantine's in it and a few others that I recognise, but I don't really know them that well. But I enjoyed this book for what it was, and I will read the Dark Justice League at some point. But I just wanted to read mainly the main Justice League, who I really love. That was neat.
So I picked up the Green Lantern. This one is written by Jeffrey Thorne, art by Tom Ranney, and colors by Mike Attier. This when I first opened this book, I was like, oh man, dang, who are these people? This is really cool. And then I realized, like, oh, this is supposed to be John Stewart. And then I realized, like, in my head, the version of John Stewart that I always think of is the John Stewart from the Justice League cartoon that used to be on Cartoon Network back in the early 2000s. So this is a John Stewart unlike any John Stewart I've ever seen before. But again, they make mention that this is post DC Metal issue 7. The Green Lanterns have lost their powers, they have lost their rings, and they have no battery to recharge any of their rings. So basically, we see John Stewart and his little loyal squad of people, and they're helping some aliens on some planet fight off this overwhelming force. But basically, they are all kind of engaged in just a hand-to-hand combat ground war. Like, they have no superhuman abilities at this point to save these people. So the bulk of the Green Lantern book is kind of John Stewart trying to keep these really evil people at bay and trying to save this planet and its people. This was weird to me because I did not enjoy the art at all, but I loved the colors. I thought the coloring was great in this book, but I did not enjoy the way that anything was drawn. The second story in this book, now this was another book that had 3 stories, but it didn't have the price tag that the next Batman had at $6.99 or whatever. This was a $5.99 book. So the next story is about the Green Lantern and Jessica Cruz, and I thought this was really clever. It was the title of this one is called The Taking of Sector 0123, which to me was a takeoff of The Taking of Pelham 123, which was a story about a train heist. That the last version of that, what came out in 2009 with Denzel Washington and John Travolta. I love that movie. It was pretty fantastic. Anyway, so I got a kick out of the title of this one, but to watch her, like, she's stuck in this old battery station by herself. She's been there for about a year. 3 members of the Sinestro Corps come over, and they're trying to kind of connect their yellow lantern to this lantern to siphon off all of the information and take whatever they can. And so Jessica Cruz, with no powers or anything, she kind of literally talks herself into stopping them from taking this information. And then by the time all is said and done, she collects the yellow rings from the Sinestro Corps as she kind of takes them down. And so by the very end, when she's taking down a lieutenant in the Sinestro Corps, one of the yellow rings is like, oh, hey, by the way, like, you're really good at striking fear in people, so you should totally come and join the Sinestro Corps. So it kind of ends that way as like a to be continued. Like, is she going to accept it? Is she going to turn into a yellow lantern instead of a green lantern? Anyway, I thought that one was really cool just because it kind of had like that Alien Isolation vibe where it's like one woman to save this entire station, and like who knows what information she's trying to hold on to, but she just refuses to let the bad guys win. So I really, really enjoyed that story. And then the third story in this book is about Guy Gardner, and it's called The Book of Guy. So when the rings lose their power, Guy is on this planet and he's trying to stop a civil war from happening. So he swoops in and he's like, look here, like, stop fighting. This is ridiculous. You know, Guy Gardner has always been like the king of the jerks. He's such an asshole. And like, it's always apparent in everything that he does. So this one, the writer on this book is Ernie Altbecker. The art is by Clayton Henry and the colors are by Marcello Maiolo. So basically this book, he literally loses all of his powers right in the middle of him trying to talk these people down from the brink of civil war. So after he loses his powers, he still is like, I guess he had gotten far enough with the power of the ring that they were like, oh my God, this guy's a prophet. So of course, like the last thing a jerk like Guy Gardner needs is for someone to massage his ego. So we flash to a year later and he has now been considered a prophet. So he's a prophet for these people and they have like propped him up and he has like his own house and he's learning their language and still trying to keep things going. And then we kind of flash forward to 25 years later. So whatever happened in Death Metal 7, like the Lanterns have been out of commission for literally 25 years at this point. And so after 25 years, he's mastered the language. He has actually run out of things to fix. Like he has brought these people modern things such as like indoor plumbing. So he's actually been doing a lot of good here. But right at the end of this issue, it's kind of like one detractor steps forward and he's like, you are not a prophet. You're a heretic, this, that, and the other. And so it's like, oh, well, now it's to be continued. But so it was kind of interesting to see that side of Guy Gardner versus him just being a jerk the entire time. So of all the side stories, I really, really, really enjoyed the Jessica Cruz side story. But this Green Lantern book, again, didn't enjoy the art. I love the colors. But would I keep up with the Green Lantern story? No, I wouldn't. But I do kind of want to know what happens with this next part of the Jessica Cruz and the Sinestro and the Yellow Lantern Corps.
I've got it to read. I am going to read it, and may let you know next week what I think. So, we decided not to rate the books, but we just keep them. That we felt that the concept of Future State was actually quite a good concept and a good event, actually, as events go. And we've, as an event, we've rated it as we did last week, sticking to our rating. There's 4 out of 5. And it kind of starts to bring us towards the end of our show. So
Yep.
as we always end with a recommendation of something that we've done on our own. And 2 weeks ago in America, issue 3 of Crossover came out. However, apparently, because there's a pandemic and deliveries and stuff are struggling, we didn't get it 2 weeks ago. So we were never going to get our delivery in the UK over Christmas. And then last week, only the DC books came to America because they have some different arrangements. However, Crossover and all my other books that are not DC related came out this week. And I picked up issue 3 of Crossover and I got the Spawn cover variant. And I wanted to get this one because I was really wondered, was Spawn going to be in it? He was not. But I still love this particular cover anyway. It was amazing. I'm not going to talk too much about it. we reviewed the first issue of Crossover a couple of months ago, and we both loved it because
it was episode 23, the same episode where we reviewed the Queen's Gambit.
Which we both loved. And
that's not entirely true.
So Donny Cates wrote this, Jeff Shaw illustrated this, and it was colored by D. Cuniff. Anyway, this book is amazing. Honestly, it's a proper page turner. So if you don't know anything about Crossover, it's where actually is, we're referring to events, like an event in a comic book was so big that it spilled out into the real world and brought all comic book characters into the real world. And it happened, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. I can't remember exactly in the comic. And then a dome went up. One of the heroes of the new comics that came into the world put up a dome, so no one knows what's going on. But when he put this dome up, it also trapped any humans that were stuck inside it, as well as our main character's parents, Elle. So the main character is not a character that anyone knows. She was created for this book, and there's, again, it's following the son of the sort of the priest as well, who's extremely anti
everything,
anti everything, but any comic book related characters. Anyway, they sort of all team up with some different people. So it's quite funny. There's this moment where this sort of wizard guy introduces himself and gets referred to as Doctor Strange, and I was like, no, they didn't. No, they like. I was like, they go, it's the little girl that they rescued in the first issue goes, it's Doctor Strange, and then Elle goes, it's not Doctor Strange, and then he actually introduced himself as Dr. Black with a Q. And then some other characters team up who I've never heard of before, so I don't know if they're for this or from another comic or something, but they're called the Paybacks. Anyway, they're all, because actually they do mention the Paybacks. So I actually will need to Google this. They said the Paybacks was a Dark Horse comic. They actually say that in there and got cancelled. And the characters themselves go, for fucking what? Like, they go to the characters. Oh yeah, you're a Dark Horse comic, and they went. That got it was really. They said for a while it was good for a while, and then it got cancelled. It was cancelled, and then they went cancelled for fucking what? And then one of the other characters goes, "What's that now about a horse?" And I actually do need to Google this, and then literally you turn the last page, and there is an actual comic book crossover. Of a character. I won't ruin it, but it was by a character created by Michael Red. So yeah, I was a bit taken back. Like, I was thinking, yeah, this is actually going to start bringing in comic book characters that we know. I liked the Doctor Strange reference, but they're clearly never going to be allowed to have Marvel characters or DC. However, independents are clearly up for grabs. My comic book guy, when I picked this up, did say that apparently issue 6 of Crossover is one to look out for. So,
well, we said after we reviewed it, I said anyway, that I would go back and take a look at this once it was collected as a volume. So after volume 6 comes out, I'll probably pick up the whole first volume of Crossover.
Yeah, I think it's going to, well, I'm enjoying it. So,
yeah. So my recommendation this week, surprise, surprise, is an anime. It is a new anime that hit Funimation. It is called Kimono Jihen. It is sort of like, to me, it was sort of like a mashup between Demon Slayer and Gangsta, where it's kind of like it's violent, but the characters, you're immediately drawn to them and you kind of fall in love with the main characters right away. It is basically about this sort of mixed hybrid race of humans mixed with all kinds of other things, and all of those things collectively are kind of called monsters, which is kimono. And it was really intriguing. So the first episode kind of centers around this orphan kid who he thinks his parents abandoned him, but this detective comes to town and he's like, oh no, based on the talisman that you're wearing, your parents didn't abandon you. They did what they thought was best for you. So he ends up taking this kid from this rural town back with him to Tokyo, because turns out that guy is a half human as well. So it's really interesting so far. There's only been one episode. It comes out on Sundays. So there's only been one episode, but I really like it and it's definitely on my watch list. So I would check it out if you're interested in any kind of like demon supernatural elements to your anime, then Kimono Jihen is my recommendation for this week.
I just quickly jump back to my recommendation. I just googled it quickly. The Payback's Israel by Dark Horse.
Were they cancelled?
I didn't check that bit, but what I was interested in, it was written by Donny Cates and illustrated by Jeff Shaw. So I hadn't heard of them. So, but anyway, that's enough of that. So next week we'll be reviewing the first episode of Batman season 2 and checking out our new Batwoman. I thought I said Batwoman. Anyway, Batwoman season 2 episode 1.
I've heard good things so far for the people that got early reviews, so I'm excited to take a look.
Oh, that's good. That's good because Ruby wasn't.
Yeah, so far everyone says it is miles better than the first season, so I'm super excited to take a look at season 2.
I am too, and then we are also going to review the premiere of Walker. So 2 CW shows next week.
And as a reminder, don't forget we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our fourth Late to the Party Book Club episode was Monstrous Awakening Volume 1, which is written by Marjorie Liu and drawn by Sana Takeda. That episode dropped at the beginning of January, and our guest was Allie Burke, so be sure to check that out. And our next graphic novel for the month of February is going to be March Volume 1 by Andrew Iden and John Lewis.
You can also follow Geeks of Niche on social media. We're Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also you wanted to shout out this week about our own personal Twitters. So I am just Mark Brassington. That is just Mark Brassington, the @ Mark, and then the Brassington is BRASSINGTON. And yourself?
I am at Fiore Bianca. I am not on Facebook, but you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. So check us out.
And you can listen to our... Oh, sorry, that was your bit.
You can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Google, Apple, Spotify, Podbean. We are everywhere. So be sure to leave us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much. Cheers for listening, guys. Have a good week.
Thanks. Bye.